Hello, welcome to today's hello, and welcome to today's weekend stream. Internet's catching up. All right, welcome. Got the new mic. Just bring it right a little bit closer. Out of the frame. Out of the frame. Yeah, actually, you guys need to be able to see the fly. Messenger. Sorry. All right. Well, let's tie something. Um. So, welcome to the weekend stream. We're just hanging out, tying flies, trying to beat the shelter in place blues. Let me just bring my mic down just a little bit. I think I'm a little bit high. The volume's just a little bit high. All right. So yeah, thanks for hanging out with me today. We're gonna be tying a fly, maybe tie a couple of flies. I don't have too much of a plan right now. Just finished my semester yesterday. Turned in my final last paper. So yeah, I am. I'm technically on my spring break right now. For those who are interested, I'm getting my master's in public health, concentrating in epidemiology. So it's very interesting times we're living in, especially as a public health student. Um, yeah, but welcome. So today we're gonna tie a Mary Orvis Marbury fly, and then maybe start a classic fly. I haven't quite decided how much I'm going to tie today. Uh, Maybe make this a little bit longer stream, just because I know people are looking for stuff to watch, needing something to do, and to be honest, I enjoy chatting to you guys. Right now in the vise, I have a partridge round bend. This is a 2/0. As you can see, I've already started the underbody using my normal unistretch, and I have this loop, this extra large loop of gut fishing line at the front. And essentially, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a very short snell. Um, Normally, if I were doing a snelled fly, let's see if I have an example. 1 second. Right. So normally, if I'm doing a snelled fly, I do a much longer snell, because most snells are used this way a little bit longer. Um, because these flies go into frames, however, I kind of feel like a longer snell is a little bit wasted. They get in the way, especially when you're framing the flies. So I've since tying this fly, and now that I've tying more of this style of fly, I've come to prefer a shorter snell just because it fits into a frame a little bit better. Um, so yeah, but anyway, this is a partridge round bend. Um, Again, this was provided to me at the Lefty Craze Tie Fest by Willowy Mock. I think that's how you pronounce it. Willowy Mock Creek, which is Partridge's U.S. Importer, and so this is the round bend 2/0, bronze finish, very nice hook. Uh, the the only comment that I would have about a lot of kind of the classic hooks made today is that the the transition from the barb to the point usually isn't quite as refined as I would like it to be. Um, a lot of times with machine-made barbs or machine-cut barbs that aren't hand-refined, there's a little bit of like a hump or a lump of material that gets pushed up by the process, and that can ruin the lines of the point. But it's not such a big deal, uh, and it's a small thing. Um, so this is the first time that I've tied on this particular model of hook. But for those of you who have seen my other streams or have seen my stuff on YouTube or Instagram rather, um, I have tied on vintage round bend hooks before. Uh, they are a pretty great hook. They lend themselves pretty well to the style. One thing that I do like about the partridge hooks, just looking at them, is the round bend isn't quite truly a round bend. It's not like a perfect like half circle, like some other models of round bend hooks are. And the reason why I appreciate that is because it gives it a little bit more of a graceful sweep around the bend. It doesn't look quite so chunky at the tail end, um, and it makes doing things like mounting tips, tags, and tails just a little bit easier than on a true round bend. So I finished my underbody. I've basically run the gut down pretty much, I don't know, a little more than halfway down the body, just to help build up the underbody. So I don't quite need as much underbody for this fly. Um, the plan, I think, is to tie a McLeod. Um, it's not a Mary Orvis. It's a fly from Mary Orvis Marbury that I've tied before, so it'll be very interesting. It looks very bright and colorful, cheery, and so I'm looking forward to this. So just gonna finish my unistretch. Going to start, or rather restart my slipper fingers. Restart my ultra thread. This is 70 denier. For those of you who were around last weekend, this is still the same spool that I kept breaking off on. Like I said, this spool for some reason got really beat up, and so even just the thread on the spool is looks a little bit frayed. So I don't know. It's just something we're gonna have to keep an eye on. So this thing has a oval gold tinsel tip and a yellow silk floss tag. Let's see. My yellow silk. I have some ultra fine antique gold tinsel. Just need. I always keep a bit of scotch tape handy. Uh, there are lots of ways to keep spools of material from unraveling. I tend to just scotch tape it to the top or bottom of the spool. Yeah, just like that. Especially if the notch won't hold it. It's kind of low tech, but it works. All right. So I'm going to tie in the tip. Advance the thread one more turn, maybe a couple more. So advance the thread out of my way. Gonna wrap. So whenever I tie a tip, the first wrap of tinsel always goes around bare shank, so that the second one goes around thread, and automatically right there, just with that kind of change from bare shank to the first thread wrap of the underbody, you get a kind of a tapered tip. To back, tie it off. Now I'm always going to tie off on the back side for the tip because I don't want to build up any bulk underneath the body early on. Maybe later, but not here. I'm going to leave all of these tag ends a little bit long because the body doesn't have a true butt, and you'll see what I mean. It calls for a butt, but it's not really a butt. All right, so we'll advance up to there approximately. This round end shanks can be a little bit tricky if you're tying like salmon flies because the point of the hook. By the time you put your tag at the point of the hook, you've already reached flat shank, and I kind of like having the tip and the tag down the bend the curve of the hook, or bend of the hook just a little bit because then it clears out the line that the tail sits on. Um, with Mary Orvis Marbury flies or mom style flies, that doesn't matter quite as much. A little yellow silk. Just get the thread out of the way. Okay. Oop, nuts. That's what happens when you let go a little bit too early. Fortunately, I think this can be salvaged. Yeah, easy. So that almost turned out better. Second time. Okay. Yeah, my hands are a little bit slippery because I just washed them. Should all be washing your hands. But washing your hands before you start tying flies is a good idea because it removes oils from your hands, which can make which can mat down materials or dull materials. So definitely washing your hands is before tying, especially classic flies, is always a good idea. Let's see. So red and yellow and brown fibers. I'm going to use turkey for my brown fiber. Just regular old mottled turkey. And then, because this is a 2/0 hook, and I want to be consistent in my choice of materials between the wing and the tail, I am going to use turkey for the tail, even though I probably could tie it using goose. I just want to be consistent because I think I'm gonna have to use turkey in the wing for a 2/0 hook. In particular, because I think I'm just I think I only have short goose sections left. So let's see. I'm just gonna marry up a quick, easy tail. The nice thing about Mary Orvis Marbury flies, or perhaps one of the key characteristics, is even if they have elements that are married, they're usually pretty simply done. They're not mixed. They're not mixed like you would see on a salmon fly, or particularly a modern salmon fly. So yellow, red, brown, but some Mary Orvis Marbury flies. I think the brown should be on the bottom. Now, there's nothing to say that you can't mix the wing. It's just, in style, it wasn't commonly done. Just everything's very simply married. I think that's appropriately attractive. Let's do the other side. Yeah, and just to go over marrying fibers together, it's just you put them together. You cut out whatever size slip you want, and then you just put it next to whatever you want to marry it to. And kind of the trick is to get the barbs to interlock. So I'm just going to put it next to that. And usually they're pretty good, especially turkey. Since I'm marrying turkey to turkey, it's not such a big deal. But just kind of using my fingers to push the fibers, the slips together. I think the fibers on this side are a little bit thicker. I've already just cut a few more. I'm going to cut one more of each color. So I'm going to take one off because it's a little bit too of a robust wing, or not wing, but tail, compared to the other side that I just married. So I'm just going to take one off, and then maybe some off the brown too. We'll have to see. I hope my audio is okay. I am, again, using the new microphone, so I hope it's not terrible. I'm still trying to figure out how to set it up in a good place for me to talk to it, but still be able to tie. So here are the two sides of the tail. They're pretty close. Yeah, so this side just needs to take a little bit off the brown segment. I'm actually going to take it off there because I noticed that one of the fibers in the brown segment was broken, so just going to trim that up. Get rid of that conveniently. Again, it's a 2/0 hook, so everything's just a little bit more robust than I would on a size 2 hook or something similar. That's fine. So I'm going to put the married bits back to back, just like I was doing a wing. Nothing different from a wing here. Make sure everything is lined up. Make sure the colors are similar, lined up. Very good. Yeah, maybe like that. And I'm going to tie it on just like a wing. There we go. That is the tail. It's a pretty robust tail. I'm going to bind it down for a little bit, and I'm going to stop there because it does. The pattern does call for a butt, but it is a butt of red floss, which is a little bit unusual. Normally, if you have a butt, it's a herl butt or a uh, dubbed like a seal butt or a wool butt, because um, you want to typically you wanted a little extra mass there, or you end up with a little bit of extra mass there from tying in the tail, so you want to cover it up. But sometimes you'll find descriptions of body segments having tinsel as butts, or sometimes they'll describe hackles that occur at body joints as butts of hackle. So you can get different things being considered the butt, but not typically floss. I think there's a handful of patterns that do in salmon flies. I think floss butts are a little bit more common in Mary Orvis Marbury flies because it's a different style. Um, but it's an unusual feature. All right, so we're just going to grab the crimson. Oop. Then we're going to probably drop it. Oh. Let's see. Again, we just need a short piece because it's a short butt. Again, we're leaving all of these tag ends and butt ends long because um, there's no other transition. There's this floss butt, and then it goes straight into the floss body. By leaving all of these tag ends a little bit long, you hide. You can. It's a little bit easier to hide the extra bulk you're going to gain from not having from tying everything in and not having a true butt to hide all that extra bulk under. So tie this here. The other thing is you can distribute your tie off points around the hook, and that helps hide bulk if you don't have a butt to hide it under. And it also helps just kind of you can, when you cut off these tag ends. I'm just gonna trim this up a little bit so it's not in my way. You can trim everything at an angle, and you can increase that taper on your body going towards the head, front taper. So, what's next? This thing has a rib of black silk and a body of yellow floss silk. So I'm going to dig out I finally organized all the bits and bobs, the spare bits and bobs of floss, silk that I had laying around. Yeah, there we go. I've just put everything on a card with some notches cut into it. That just helps keep the floss from, getting wrapped up with itself and fraying. So this piece here is probably a cutoff from. Oh, it's got a knot in it. It's probably a cutoff from something. I would guess probably a silk body, or sometime when I used black silk as a rib previously. Um, but I'm just gonna take a little that spare piece. I don't need much for a rib. I'm going to tie it in on the back side of the hook again to avoid adding any kind of unnecessary bulk on the top or bottom, so that it's not a bump. And I'm just going to wrap forward, binding everything down. Making sure all of these tag ends and butt ends uh, remain distributed around the hook so that it looks smooth. Constantly flattening my thread. And then once I get kind of everything secure, I'm going to trim everything at an angle. So that when I get to the ends of these materials, it'll all kind of taper in towards the head. This also puts a layer of white thread. I know, like some of the red things are going to show through, but this puts a layer of white thread on top of it, and that just helps so that the colors underneath don't bleed through the yellow floss. Because yellow floss and white floss, pale blue floss, any bold colors that occur directly underneath them will show through. Particularly if the fly gets wet. Not planning on having this fly get fished, but if the fly gets wet, uh, all of these colors will show through. Having another layer of white thread between the colors underneath and the yellow floss is a little extra security. I think given that this is just 70 denier ultra thread, it's probably not going to make much of a difference, but certainly for a display, putting it under lights, you will see the difference. And again, being careful just to tie everything smoothly and ensuring things don't get rotated too much around the shank, because I don't want to introduce any additional lumps. No lumps, no bumps. There you go. Okay, and I want to leave enough space at the head for the wing, for the hackle, and for a nice black ostrich herl head. So it might not have an ostrich herl butt, but by God, it's got an ostrich herl head. The body is just yellow silk. So I'm going to pull off from my spool a decent chunk, because this is rather thin floss, so I can use a lot. always want to pull off just a little extra, a little more floss than you think you'll need. Um, just because it's better to have a little too much than a little too little. And just rolling my thread forward just to get it out of the way. Wrap the body. Again, I don't use silk gloves because I did wash my hands, which helps remove the oils that would mar the silk otherwise. Yeah, if you have clean hands, silk, the silk, the cotton or silk gloves that people often wear while winding floss aren't necessary. Sometimes, I understand at shows you can't go and wash your hands prior to winding a silk body all the time. Uh, but, at home. I definitely think tying without gloves on, you get better control over the silk because you can actually feel where it's, how it's pulling against it and whether it's flat. I just feel like with silk gloves on or gloves on, you just can't feel that. Line right up to the butt just to make sure it's a good transition. I'm going to take one full turn and then advance thread again. And that just makes sure that I take out. There's a little bit of a bump there, just because I think the red silk butt had a front taper going on, but that's not. It's not bad. Tie off the silk. I'm gonna tie now. Now that I've reached the head portion or the front end portion, I'm gonna tie everything off beneath the hook because the wing is gonna go on top immediately next. The hackle goes on last as a collar, and so that kind of acts almost like a herl butt in that it covers up the bulk uh, you get from tying on all the materials all at once. So by tying everything out here on underneath the hook, I build up the bulk underneath, and that balances the bulk that I'll get on top. So when I tie the hackle and the herl head, it'll look centered on the hook and not like it's sitting too high on the hook. All right, so to wrap this as a rib, I'm going to give it a twist because I don't want it to spread. I don't want it to go on flat. And then I'm just going to wrap it as if it were a regular rib, maybe like wire. Um, I could go for 5 or 7 rib wraps. See how it looks with 5 and how far I have to go. Yeah, the one thing about wrapping on a floss rib is not only do you have to consider the spacing between the ribs, but also how flat the floss goes on because that'll affect the width the width of the floss itself and how bold that stripe of floss is going to appear on the body, because the floss will want to go on flat. So you want everything to be of equal width. That looks pretty good from this side. Great. So yeah, that's a pretty striking body, if you ask me. I think it's always interesting when floss is used as a ribbing material. Okay, so the wing is brown hen and red dye goose. I'm of course going to be using red dye turkey because this is a larger hook. For my brown hen, so it just says mottled brown hen. So I'm going to use this brown soft hackle patch because it's a very nice kind of mottled and speckled brown. I think given a choice, I would probably go for something a little bit darker in color, but this is what I have. And there's some pretty good darker colored feathers that I think I can pick from. Just got to pick a couple that are large enough. Let me just pull a couple feathers off and see if they're big enough. The nice thing about this patch is that the feathers are actually pretty soft. And the other thing is this has a strip of red turkey under it. So this is more or less an underwing and not like the wing. So that's a pretty good size. If I see if I can find a matching feather from the other side. And of course, whenever you're doing a wing using two feathers that go, back to back or something, you want them, of course, to be as close to matching as possible, because you need them to be of, equal curvature, not just equal color, but equal curvature, um, and of equal, what you might call like strength, because they need to oppose each other in order to stand up in the wing. So I'm just preparing the feathers by stripping all the extra floof from the bottom. Portion of the feather that isn't going to get in the wing. Just going to measure them. That looks pretty good. I'm going to trim a little bit of the extra just so it's not getting in my way as I tie it on. I'm going to flatten. The stems right at the tie-in point and give it a slight bend up, so you can see. Give a slight bend, and that way the feathers will lay a little bit closer to the body, but not be crushed up against it. So as you can see, looks like that. Gonna tie it in. These may need some adjustment, like usual. Hopefully not, though. This is a pretty thick body. I feel like I've really got these a little bit crossed. Come on. Yeah, so it's just looking at this wing. We do have the typical problem where because we're tying flat stems that I flattened, to 90 degrees to the feather, the plane of the feather, but I'm tying it onto a round shank. Uh, the roundness of the shank is actually pushing the wing feathers to be a little bit like splayed open, like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these off. I'm going to give the flattened rachises a little bit of a twist to counteract that. So flattened it here, right, like this. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a twist so that when it sits on the hook, um, it'll be pushed back towards the center. And just a little twist. Little twist will do you. Time's on. Again. Yeah. And just by doing that, these two feathers went from this to like they're stapled together. All right, so before I do anything else, I'm going to wax my thread. Secure these with a couple turns of wax thread, just so they don't move while I tie everything else on. Because that is one of the most frustrating things, is to tie on a bit of the wing and then have it shift on you while you tie the rest of it on. There we go. Looks good. These are such pretty hen feathers. Slide this down. Bring my thread back to the tying place. Again, because it's got a hackle, a collar hackle, and a herl head, I'm not terribly worried about building up a little bit of extra bulk at the head. I just want to make sure that it's evenly distributed. Feathers. Now I'm going to add the red goose, or the red turkey in my case. And it doesn't have to be a ginormous strip. It's just a flash of color along the side. I'm probably going to shoot for about 6 or 7 barbs. I think that's 6. Fairly good sized chunk. And it's just going to tie in that. Actually, I'm going to try and tie it in so that it follows the line of the feather, or the hen. So 6 from the other side. Yeah, so I want it to sit a little bit like that. Now I suppose one way to tie these in so that they both lie equally on the side of the wing is to tie one on and then reverse my thread. And I actually think that's what I'm going to do, because that one went on beautifully. So then I'm going to reverse my thread by putting the thread between the gut and the. I've got my window open, and of course the neighbors are being loud. Day of stream. Just gonna make sure that this one's a little bit similar. Just tie tie. So by reversing my thread, I apply equal pressure to both sides as I tie them on. So then they lay equally. Because if you tie, if you tie only in one direction, everything that gets tied on the other side is having the thread push it away from the hook, whereas everything being tied on the near side is having the thread push it towards or into the hook. And that kind of inequality or imbalance of forces on the materials is oftentimes why, you know, one side looks like everything's been shifted up towards the top of the wing, and the other side looks like everything's kind of been pushed down to the bottom of the wing. So by reversing my thread, I actually apply the same force to both sides while I'm tying it in, and that helps balance the forces in the wing and makes tying things in on equal planes in terms of where they sit in the wing easier. It's a great trick. It works especially well for soft materials like goose or duck. It probably isn't terribly necessary for turkey. But again, I want this wing to look nice and even, and that certainly helps achieve it. Okay, so next is the collar hackle, and that's yellow. Um, Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that I didn't have two different colors of yellow, because sometimes I do. But I have this very nice, bright marigold yellow rooster, strung neck hackle from John McLean at feathersmc.com. I think I plug every single stream. I'm not sponsored, I swear. But, John's where to get the goods at. There are other purveyors out there. Don't sometimes you might have to go to a couple sellers to find what you're looking for, but John usually has the goods. All right, so I'm looking for because this is a collar hackle. I don't need like usual. I don't need a hackle with a lot of taper to it. This one might be a little bit big. I mean, this is a 2/0 hook, but I think this one's still just a little bit too big. So not quite right. Yeah, and I want to save a little bit of material conservation here. I want to save the hackles with a lot of taper for body hackles. So this one is okay. It has a little bit of taper, which isn't bad, but it's not a terribly large amount of taper. The only thing I don't like is some of these fibers got a little bit bent up, just being strung. That's okay. I probably won't even reach them, or if I tie this on carefully, they won't. They'll be the fibers closest to the body, and so you won't see them as much. And again, because my thread is waxed, or there was waxed thread tied recently, it makes it less likely that this hackle will pull out as I tie it in. And then just folding my hackle as normal on the fly, gently pulling all of the fibers on the wayward side or the outside and just pulling them towards the back. And wrap. Just keep pulling them. A couple of these got stuck on the wrong side. So the goal of folding a hackle is just to not have any of the fibers or any of the hackle fibers end up pointing forward. Like you want them all to be sweeping back towards the back of the fly. So I think that's probably enough. Yeah, maybe one. So to tie it off, I take a wrap and I just kind of by wiggling my thread back and forth, I clear all of the hackle fibers. And if you have a nice stiff fibered neck hackle or rooster hackle, that's pretty easy. That works very nicely. Just going to bind that all down. So that's a nice collar there. Pull up the hen a little bit, pull up the turkey a little bit, just so it's not veiling the body. So that looks nice. Let me see. Pull off a couple of wraps here, and I'm going to do like usual. Wax my thread. And I'm going to bind everything down. Some waxed wraps of thread. Now, black ostrich herl head. This is a 2/0 hook, so I'm going to use the thicker or the more densely fibered herl. So this is some beautiful black. Excuse me. This is some beautifully black dyed ostrich herl. Just got some stuff in my throat. And just to keep it out of the way of the hackle, I'm going to use hackle pliers to tie in the herl. And just like the hackle, I'm not going to fold the herl, but I'm just going to make sure all the fibers are, not going to get trapped pointing forward. I know that there are people in the world. Ooh, no, I don't think that. So when you tie in your herl, you want to tie in the herl so that tie that in wrong. So all the fibers on a herl. So there's the stem, and the stem is flat. But all of the fibers of the herl, if this is the stem, all the fibers of the herl actually occur on one side of the flattened stem, and not like in the middle, like a hackle. They all occur on one side. So you want to tie it in so that the herl, the fluffy bits, the fibers of the herl, are towards the back end of the fly when you wind. So that way you can pack as many of them onto the head with every wrap. So I think I did that right this time. Sometimes it can be difficult to see, especially if you have a very fine herl, but I think that still looks wrong. I tied it on. Did I tie it in wrong again? I think it's just folding weird. I've got a twist in it. Nice thing about these, oh yeah, keep tying it in upside down. So the way I tie in my herl is that if you look at the way the stem flattens, the herl, the fibers of the herl are towards the top or towards the wing, and the stem is on the bottom. So I tie it in. If this is the stem of the fly of the herl, and these are the fluffy bits, the fibers, I tie it in like this on the side of the wing, so that when you start wrapping it, it folds, so that the fibers of the herl are towards the back of the fly, and that allows you to get a much denser head. Of course, like I said, it can be a little bit difficult to see sometimes. I think I got it right this time. One of the nice things about using these articulated hackle pliers is that if you get a twist in the herl, you can just easily untwist it without letting go of the crusher. And again, I want the herl fibers to not go, to lay back towards the body and not point towards the head or towards the front. So I'm constantly just kind of brushing them backwards. Great. And I'm going to stop there. Take 1, 2 wraps of thread. I'm going to finish the head of the fly just with a couple wraps of wax thread, just to bind down the extra tag end of the herl, so that I don't, so it doesn't pull out. You can always just gently, wet your fingers and push the herl back. It'll return to its kind of normal fluffiness, or sticking out. But pushing the herl fibers back just a little bit can give you a little bit extra space to work. And that, to whip finish. This is the McLeod. And to finish the snell, so as you can see, it's just an extra large loop of gut. To finish the snell, I'm going to tie a small band of silk, right about here, and that'll suck these two sides of the silk together, so I have a small loop. I'll do that after I've finished the fly and lacquered the head. But here's the McLeod. From Mary Orvis Marbury. Very bright, very colorful fly. This is my first time tying this, and I really like this fly. I really like the way it looks. So there's that. And I'm going to just put away a few of my feathers here. I think I'm going to call it there. So, like I said, I'm on what is essentially my spring break this week, and so I'm probably going to stream a few times during the week. Um, at least that's the plan. I've got a lot, and I got a long to-do list, things that I've been putting off, but I'm hopefully going to be able to stream a few times. So stand by, stay tuned. Hit the subscribe button if you want to be notified about when I go live. We'll tie a few more flies like this. We'll tie probably a couple of salmon flies. Um, and yeah, if you'd like to see more of my work, check out my Instagram. It's at justwondering.brad. If you'd like to support the stream, like I mentioned, I'm streaming on a new microphone. Hopefully, it improves the sound quality, but it certainly helps that I don't have to wear my usual headset. Uh, that was because of some generous support from people who purchased flies off my Etsy shop. My Etsy shop is Studio1213, and I really appreciate that. All of the money that I get off the Etsy shop goes towards, buying my materials, that go into the tool chest or into my rack of feathers over here. And that also goes towards buying equipment such as the microphone to help improve the streams. Uh, I think right now my top goal is to try and raise enough money to purchase a slightly upgraded computer so that the video can be better, the audio can be better, and also I want to start editing videos, some how-to videos, uh, to show you a little bit more up close because I realize this setup here is still pretty distant. Um, I would like to be able to bring in, like a webcam or even a higher quality camcorder a little bit closer so that you can see what I'm doing in a little bit more detail. So that's my next goal using the funds from the Etsy shop. So yeah, if you want to support the channel, if you want to help improve the quality of the stream or of my videos, you know, I appreciate all of the support. And I don't want to just ask for donations. I want to sell these flies. I want to give you something in return. So selling these flies is a way for me to not just ask for donations. Um, yeah. So thanks for hanging out with me. Um, and like I said, I'm going to be streaming during the week throughout this next week since I'm on break. And I want to hang out with you guys. I know with everything going on with COVID-19, people are looking for things to do while they're at home. I am. That's why I enjoy streaming. Um, I think for next Saturday's stream, for the next weekend stream, I'm going to do a Q&A. So I think the one place, if you want to ask a question for next weekend stream, so that'll probably be Saturday or Sunday of next weekend. Uh, Post a comment below on this video below, or you can head over to my Instagram, justwondering.brad. I'm going to post a picture of this fly once I've put head cement on and finished the snell. I'll post a picture over on Instagram, and I'll say comment on this if you have a question for Q&A. That way, we'll have a good stock of Q&A questions for next Saturday or next Sunday, depending on when I do the weekend stream. And I'll answer your questions. Anything about fly tying, classic salmon flies, Mary Orvis Marbury flies. If you want to ask me about the ongoing epidemic or pandemic, rather, like I said, I'm in school right now for my master's of public health in epidemiology. So this is a very exciting time, and I don't mean exciting like woo yeah, but like you know we have all the anxieties of regular people, but we kind of know what's going on a little bit better, and it's very interesting to see how things are being handled today compared to how they might have been handled 10 or 20 years ago. Um, so you can ask me questions about that if you want. I'm not an expert in viruses. My expertise is actually in bacteria, but if you ask a question early, I can do some research, look it up. But yeah, next weekend stream will be a Q&A. The streams during the week probably won't be Q&As, although you can feel free to ask me questions. And yeah, so thanks for hanging out. Instagram, justwondering.brad, Etsy, studio1213. And thank you for watching. Thank you all for your support. And stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next stream.